Library service is one of the public services set up during the pre-independence period in Kenya. Early in 1960, African district councils began to take a direct interest in setting up libraries. The movement started with Kiambu in 1959, followed in 1961 and 1962 by Nyeri, Embu and Kilifi. Kisii came up in 1963. Eldoret Municipality in 1961 was the first of the local government authorities to start a library service for its residents. In Nyeri, Ruringu Memorial Library was started by African Initiative Council. In 1962, it was reported that African district councils in nearly every province were requesting for libraries. However, the growth of a public library movement through local initiative with local authority support and meeting local needs was killed by the plans for development at the national level. In Mombasa, a free reading room was first opened in 1903 in a small house at Indiaku. In 1939, the library changed name to Saif bin Salim in memory of Saif bin Salim, the brother to Sir Alim bin Salim. A new center was established in 1957. Provision of a centrally controlled public library system was part of the decolonization strategy to encourage the ideas of democracy and responsible citizenship and at the same time give the state a monopoly on the supply and control of information. After independence in 1963, the Act establishing Kenya National Library Service was passed in 1965 and gazetted in 1967 with a mandate to promote, establish, equip, manage, maintain and develop libraries in Kenya as a national library service.
Trainees were required by Kenya National Library Service, which was just starting in 1967. I applied, interviewed, and joined as a trainee graduate. At that time, there was no library service in the Kenya National Library Service. So I did some practical training in the University of Nairobi and Macmillan Library. Thereafter, I was sent to Dar es Salaam to observe and to learn what a public library system like the one we envisaged to start.
Based on a strong central library, it aimed to develop public libraries first at the provincial or area level and then at the district or branch level, while maintaining postal services to individuals and block borrowing to institutions. It was hoped that the Kenya National Library Services would be the ultimate answer to the provision of a library service for the country, and its stock development relied on donations because the money voted for local purchases was rarely available. Over the years, the Kenya National Library Services was passed from ministry to ministry. In 1965 to the Ministry of Social Services and then Education. In 1966, the Vice President's Office. In 1967, the Natural Resources. In 1972, Cooperatives and Social Services.
Kenya National Library Service started with a force of 16 workers in 1967. Currently, we have 800 workers. We have 1 million information materials. These are books, DVDs, etc. These are worth 400 million. The attendance annually is 400,000 and the registered members per year are coming at around 40,000. These are people who register with the library so that they can renew the books, they can borrow and renew, but the registration is always done afresh at the beginning of the year.
Kenya National Library Services Board is a statutory body of the Government of Kenya established by an Act of Parliament, Cap 225 of the Laws of Kenya in April 1965. The board's mandate is to develop, promote, establish and equip libraries in Kenya. The State Corporations Act, Cap 446 of the Laws of Kenya, also guides the board in its operations.
We are a public organization which is funded by the government with the clear mandate of establishing, equipping, promoting and developing libraries in this country.
The Kenya National Library Services, which started discharging its services from temporary premises in 1967, has managed to put up a purpose-built headquarters in Nairobi from a skeleton staff of under 10 and an initial collection of 25,000 volumes inherited from the EALB Library in Nairobi. In 1987, Kenya National Library Services was accorded the dual role of a national library by hosting a national reference and bibliography agency, being a legal depository library for Kenya.
Kenya National Library is the only institution in the country that is mandated to publish Kenya National Bibliography. And apart from that publication, the Kenya National Library also publishes Kenya Periodicals Directory. To differentiate the true Kenya National Bibliography are as books that are published in the country and also books that are published in diaspora. But all those books are books that are of interest to Kenya. Similarly, with the Kenya Periodicals Directory, it is magazines or periodicals that are published in the country and out there but have interest. They have interest to Kenya.
By law, it's a requirement that the publishers or the authors in Kenya deposit to us directly 2 copies of the books that they publish within 14 days of their publication. So they have been depositing the books here.
The Kenya National Library Services core functions include the promotion, establishment, equipping, management and maintenance of the national and public library services in Kenya. To maintain the national bibliographic control through publication of the Kenya National Bibliography and the Kenya Periodicals Directory and provision of national reference services. To promote information literacy and reading among Kenyans. To enhance stakeholders' participation for equitable development of libraries throughout the country. To advise the government, local authorities and other public bodies on all matters relating to library, documentation and related services. Since its establishment, the Kenya National Library Services Board, under its mandate, has been on the first lane to promote and increase the service network all over the country. By 1980, 8 provincial libraries in each province in Kenya were fully operational.
The mandate of Kenya National Library Service is to promote literacy throughout the country, so that we want to make reading a lifelong program whereby people don't just read for passing exams, but they read for information, they read for knowledge, and they read for recreation. Over the years, we have strived to make milestones in this area, culminating to a reading survey which was done in 2009. And in this survey, we found that Kenyans, 7% to 80% of Kenyans read in one way or the other. They either read the newspaper, they either read the Bible, or they read for information. But majority of Kenyans, about 7%, they read religious materials. Could be Muslim materials, could be Christian material. But now we are looking at a situation where we want to upgrade this, that Kenyans can read so that whatever they get from what they are reading is relevant for development.
Kenya National Library Services was concerned with constructing library buildings in the urban centers, but also gave attention to the rural population. People in rural communities were served by book mobiles based in provincial libraries. The first book van set out to the villages around Nairobi in 1972, meeting enthusiastic responses. The government could not finance all the needs expressed from other parts of the country, but was fortunate in securing assistance from donor agencies overseas, and 5 new vans were put into service in 1977. UNESCO provided about 15,000 books for the vans and offered further assistance in 1980, including another van. 2 additional book mobiles were acquired by the Kenya government in 1983. From 1969 to 1980, the Kenya National Library Services had established 8 provincial libraries, starting with Nairobi and Kisumu in 1969, Embu in 1970, Nyeri 1971, Kakamega 1972, Nakuru 1976, Mombasa 1976, and Garissa 1980. From 1976 to 2009, the board has established 8 district libraries that started in Eldoret in 1976, Kericho and Thika in 1981, Kisii and Meru in 1982, Wundanyi and Kabarnet in 1987, and Murang'a in 2009. The board had 37 community-based libraries spread all over the country by 2009.
We thought it wise as an organization that we can form partnerships with the communities to accelerate the process of expanding library services in this country. So what came out was very encouraging. Communities were very much willing to partner with the Kenya National Library Service Board to establish structures which were going to be used to provide library services in their own community, for their own communities. The concept or the policy is very clear, that the community can express interest to establish a library service, and then we discuss with them. If they meet all the requirements as stipulated in the policy, then we are able to plan for those proposed projects for implementation within our financial years. And this has borne fruit. As we speak today, we have our 40 branch libraries which are community-based, spread all over the country.